Hi, I'm Sarah. The rain-slicked streets of Seattle gleamed under the sodium glow of streetlights as I pulled my battered Honda Civic into the valet line. My heart thudded like a bass drum, each beat a reminder of the tightrope I was about to walk. Tonight wasn't just my brother James's 40th birthday gala. It was a stage, and I was an unwilling actor in a play I hadn't rehearsed. The waterfront estate loomed ahead, its glass walls reflecting the Puget Sound like a dark mirror, promising elegance but whispering menace. I adjusted my simple black dress, smoothing the fabric over my knees, and caught my reflection in the car window. Pale, tense, a woman bracing for a storm she could feel but couldn't see. The valet, a young guy with a practiced smile and a name tag reading Ethan, opened my door. "Evening, ma'am," he said, his eyes flicking to my car, a 2012 model with a dented fender and a faint coffee stain on the passenger seat. It looked like a stray dog among the sleek BMWs and Teslas clogging the circular drive. I handed him the keys, my fingers brushing the worn leather of my keychain, and stepped out into the damp air. The scent of salt water and cedar hung heavy, mingling with the faint perfume of wealth, cologne, champagne, and ambition. I clutched the gift bag in my hand, a sleek silver box containing a custom fountain pen for James, engraved with his initials. It had cost me half a paycheck, but he was my brother, the golden child of the Bennett family, and I'd always played my part, the supportive sister, the one who showed up. The estate's front lawn was a spectacle, string lights crisscrossing like a constellation, a jazz quartet humming from a hidden corner, and the clink of glasses promising a night of excess. Inside, the foyer glowed under crystal chandeliers, their light fracturing across marble floors like scattered diamonds. This wasn't a party, it was a coronation, and James was the king. A young woman in a crisp blazer stood at a podium, her manicured nails tapping a tablet screen. "Name?" she asked, barely looking up. "Sarah Bennett," I said, shifting the gift bag to my other hand. My voice sounded smaller than I meant it to, swallowed by the hum of conversation spilling from the ballroom. She scrolled, her brow furrowing. You're listed as a guest under the Bennett family block. +1, it says." She turned the tablet toward me, and there it was. A digital chart, pristine and cold. Bennett family, James, Margaret, Richard, Clara, +1 guest. No mention of Sarah, just a placeholder, like I was a stranger hitching a ride to their legacy. I forced a smile, the kind you paste on when you're trying not to crack. "Guess I'm the lucky +1. She hesitated, her pen hovering. "I can make you a proper name tag if you'd like." "No, it's fine," I said, too quickly. She handed me a generic badge, the word guest printed in bold Arial. I pinned it to my dress right over my heart, where it tugged at the fabric like a poorly aimed dart. Each step toward the ballroom felt heavier, the weight of being unseen pressing into my chest. I'd grown up in this family, shared bunk beds with James, helped Mom with Thanksgiving pies, laughed at Dad's terrible puns, yet here I was, reduced to a footnote. The ballroom was a cathedral of excess, silk-draped tables, waiters gliding with trays of smoked salmon canapes, and chandeliers casting a glow that made everyone look like they belonged in a magazine. I scanned the place cards, my heels clicking softly against the polished floor. My name, when I found it, was at table 20, tucked behind a decorative bamboo screen near the service door, the kind of spot where servers spilled out with shouts of hot plate and the air smelled faintly of dish soap. My place setting was off-kilter, the fork misaligned, the napkin folded into a sad attempt at a rose, its petals drooping like they'd given up before the night began. I reached to adjust it, my fingers brushing the limp linen, and felt a pang. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe I shouldn't have come. From my seat, I could barely see the head table, where James sat like a prince, his tailored suit catching the light. Mom, Margaret, stood beside him, her smile as polished as the pearls around her neck. "Our son," she said to a cluster of guests, her voice carrying over the jazz. "Regional VP at 38, can you believe it?" Dad, Richard, nodded along, his hand resting on the back of her chair, his grin wide but distant. Clara, James's new wife, leaned into him, her diamond ring flashing as she laughed at something a guest said. The room orbited them, a galaxy of admiration, and I was a speck of dust on the edge. I sipped my water, the glass cold against my palm, and tried to anchor myself. The napkin rose caught my eye again, its creases uneven, like someone had folded it in a hurry. Maybe it was a mix-up, I told myself, a clerical error. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't a mistake. It was a message. "You don't belong here, Sarah, not really." The clinking of forks on glasses signaled the start of the toasts. The lights dimmed, and a spotlight cut through the room, landing on the small stage at the front. A voice, Dad's, deep and familiar, boomed through the speakers. "And now, a few words from someone very special to us. Please welcome Sarah Bennett." My stomach lurched. I hadn't been told about a speech. I hadn't prepared a single word. The applause was polite but thin, like the room wasn't sure why I was being called. I stood, my legs unsteady, and made my way to the stage, each step echoing in my ears. The spotlight was too bright, blinding me as I shielded my eyes, searching for a cue, a smile, anything to tell me what this was about. Mom's face was a mask of charm, her lips curved but her eyes unreadable. James gave a small nod, but Clara's hand on his arm was possessive, her expression tight. Dad sat back, arms crossed, grinning like he knew something I didn't. Reached the microphone, my hands clammy. No one handed me a script. The screen behind me flickered to life and a video montage began. It started innocently enough, James in a Little League uniform swinging a bat too big for his skinny arms. Then middle school, his science fair project, a solar-powered car that won first place. High school graduation, college internship, a photo of him shaking hands with a tech CEO. The narration kicked in, Mom's voice smooth as velvet. From the start, James was destined for greatness. The light in every room, our pride. Dad's voice followed. He had that spark, you know, the kind you can't teach. It's just in you. My jaw tightened. I stood there, hands clasped, forcing a smile because the alternative would be to scream. Not once did they mention the $100,000 0 cents I'd wired to James when his startup was drowning. The nights I stayed up reworking his pitch decks when his laptop crashed. The weekends I drove across the state to help him schmooze investors. I was a ghost in their story, erased from the script they'd written for this crowd. The video ended with gold text, a legacy in the making. The applause was warm, enthusiastic, everything I wasn't. Mom rose from her seat, clapping as she approached the mic. "And now," she said, her voice bright as cut glass, "a few words from James's ever-thoughtful little sister." I blinked, the words sinking in like a slow poison. This was a setup, a performance they hadn't warned me about. My dress felt too tight, my hands too sweaty. I leaned into the mic, my voice shaky but clear. "It's a beautiful night," I began. "James, you've always had a gift for lighting up a room." Mom cut me off, her laugh sharp and staged. "Oh, honey, tell them. Wouldn't it be the perfect gift if you handed over the loft keys tonight?" The room froze. The air vanished, sucked out by her words. A cough echoed from the back. A phone camera clicked. My throat turned to sand. "What?" I whispered, not into the mic, just to her, hoping I'd misheard. She kept smiling, her teeth gleaming. "You know, that gorgeous loft in Belltown? You're always traveling for work, Sarah. James and Clara are newlyweds. It just makes sense." Dad's voice boomed from his seat. "Come on, Sarah. It's just a formality. You don't need all that space. It's not like you're using the second bedroom." The words weren't a request. They were a command dressed up in smiles and expectation. The crowd shifted, eyes darting, some curious, others embarrassed. James stared at his plate, his fork still. Clara's lips tightened, but she didn't look surprised. She knew. "This wasn't agreed on," I said into the mic, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. Gasps rippled through the room, some sympathetic, others judgmental. Mom waved a hand, her smile unwavering. "Don't be dramatic, sweetie. It's just a gesture of love." My chest burned, every nerve screaming to fight back, to list every sacrifice, the loan, the late nights, the years I'd carried their weight. But I didn't. I set the mic down, the soft thud echoing in my ears, and forced a smile, a quiet, dangerous thing that said, "I see you." Then I stepped off the stage, my heels clicking like a countdown. I hadn't made it 3 steps when I saw Dad by the dessert table, his jaw tight, his eyes locked on me. Mom stood behind him, a wine glass in hand, whispering something sharp and venomous. "She embarrassed us," I caught, her voice low but meant for me to hear. I slowed, not out of fear, but because the air felt wrong, heavy with intent. I scanned for a friendly face. Clara, James, anyone. But Clara looked away and James sipped his whiskey like I was invisible. The first danger came without warning. As I moved toward the exit, a server carrying a tray of champagne flutes stumbled. Whether by accident or design, I'll never know. The tray tipped, and a dozen glasses crashed toward me. I sidestepped just in time, the crystal shattering at my feet, shards glinting like tiny knives. A guest gasped, "Oh, my God," but no one helped. My pulse raced, my dress catching on a jagged edge as I backed away. Dad stepped forward, his hand closing around the neck of a wine bottle on the table. I thought he was pouring a drink until he turned fast and swung. The bottle's base caught my temple with a sickening crack. Light exploded behind my eyes. Not a blackout, but a white-hot flash that blurred the world. I staggered, warmth trickling down my cheek, blood hitting the marble floor like spilled ink. The room gasped, phones raised, but no one moved to help. "You selfish little brat," Mom spat, her voice cutting through the haze. "We gave you everything." The second danger followed as I stumbled toward the exit, my vision swimming. The crowd parted, but the decorative screen behind my table shifted, its heavy frame teetering. I ducked as it crashed, the bamboo splintering inches from my head. A guest muttered, "That was close," but their eyes were on their phones, not me. My heart pounded, the world tilting as I pushed forward. Outside, the third danger waited. The alley behind the venue was dark, the rain-slick pavement reflecting distant headlights. A car roared past, too close, its tires screeching as I leapt back, my heel catching on a loose cobblestone. The driver didn't stop, and the valet, Ethan, was nowhere in sight. My hands shook as I fumbled for my phone, blood crusting along my jaw. I called an Uber, collapsing into the back seat when it arrived. The driver, an older man with kind eyes, glanced at me in the rearview mirror.
"You okay, miss?"
he asked, his voice tight with concern. "Hospital," I said, my voice a rasp. The car smelled of pine air freshener, a false calm against the chaos in my head. At the ER, the fourth danger struck. The fluorescent lights flickered, then died, plunging the waiting room into darkness. Machines beeped erratically, and a nurse's shout echoed down the hall. I sat alone on a plastic chair, clutching my purse, my temple throbbing. The power outage lasted only a minute, but in that darkness, I felt the weight of being utterly alone. When the lights returned, the nurse, a woman with tired eyes and a gentle touch, cleaned my wound. "Anyone coming for you?" she asked. "No," I said, my voice flat. "Just me." She nodded, her silence saying she'd seen this before. Women showing up alone, bloodied, carrying stories no one else wanted to hear. The fifth danger came as I left the hospital, my head bandaged, my dress stained red. I climbed into my car, parked in the dimly lit garage, and started the engine. The brakes felt soft, unresponsive. I pumped them, my heart lurching as the car rolled forward, nearly hitting a concrete pillar. I slammed it into park, hands trembling, and called a tow truck. Later, the mechanic would tell me the brake line had been tampered with. Cleanly cut, not frayed. Someone had wanted me to crash. Back at Anna's apartment, I sank onto the guest bed, the room lit by a single lamp. She'd left a soft blanket and a mug of mint tea on the dresser, small gestures that felt like lifelines. I didn't touch the tea. I just lay there, shoes still on, my temple pulsing with each heartbeat. The Gala replayed in my mind, the napkin rose, the spotlight, the bottle, the blood. I closed my eyes, not to sleep, but to shut out the memory of a room full of strangers watching me bleed. Morning came too soon, the Seattle sky gray and heavy through the window. My phone buzzed with notifications, none from family. A coworker had texted a link to a video, shaky footage of the assault, my body stumbling, blood blooming at my temple. I deleted it, my hands shaking, but the image lingered. I showered, wincing as water stung my wound, and reached into my purse for my loft key, a ritual to ground myself, but it was gone. My wallet, phone, lip balm, they were all there, but the spare key, clipped to the side pocket, was missing. I emptied the purse onto the bed, my breath catching. A memory surfaced. Last week, at a tense family dinner, Dad had grabbed my bag by mistake, laughing it off. "Thought it was your mom's," he'd said, handing it back with a grin. I hadn't checked the pocket then. Now I knew. My phone rang. An unknown number. I answered, my voice hollow. "Hi, Miss Bennett," a chipper voice said. "This is Rachel from Cascade Realty, confirming your 2 p.m. walkthrough at your Belltown Loft." "I didn't schedule anything," I said, my stomach dropping. A pause. "It's under your name." "A Mr. Richard Bennett is listed as co-signer." I hung up, my hands steady now, not with calm but with clarity. They weren't just humiliating me. They were stealing my home, piece by piece. I opened my laptop, the cursor blinking like a challenge. I typed an email to Lauren, my lawyer. "I think my parents are trying to take my loft. They have my key. Can we talk?" I hit send, grabbed my coat, and headed out. The rain had stopped, but the air was thick with the promise of more. I was done being their ghost. They wanted my home. They'd have to fight for it, and I was ready to fight back. The Seattle rain had returned by the time I reached my Belltown loft, a persistent drizzle that blurred the city's edges like a smudged watercolor. My boots splashed through puddles on the sidewalk, each step a reminder of the ache in my temple, still tender from the wine bottle's blow. The locksmith's van was parked crookedly outside my building, its yellow logo a beacon in the gray. I glanced at my phone. 1:45 p.m. and quickened my pace. The realtor Rachel would be here soon for a walkthrough I hadn't authorized. My parents' audacity burned in my chest, not as anger, but as something sharper. Resolve. The locksmith, a stocky man named Carl with a salt and pepper beard, was already at my door when I reached the 5th floor. He knelt by the knob, his toolbox open like a surgeon's kit. "Someone's been here," he said, not looking up, his gloved finger tracing fresh scratches around the lock. Not a break-in, mind you. These are careful, like they had a key but didn't know the angle. My stomach twisted. "Can you change it?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Already on it," he said, pulling a new deadbolt from his bag. "Want an extra one?" "Harder to pick?" I nodded. "Do it." As he worked, the hum of his drill filled the hallway, a mechanical pulse that drowned out the city's drone. I leaned against the wall, my eyes fixed on those scratches. Small, deliberate, a betrayal etched in metal. My parents, Richard and Margaret, hadn't just humiliated me at James's gala. They'd crossed a line, slipping into my home, my sanctuary, to steal what I'd built. I thought of the missing key, lifted from my purse at that family dinner last week. Dad's sheepish grin. "Thought it was your mom's, now felt like a rehearsed lie." The first new danger crept in as Carl packed up. A faint creak echoed from the stairwell, too rhythmic to be the building settling. I froze, my hand tightening around my phone. "You hear that?" I whispered. Carl paused, tilting his head. Probably just pipes. Old buildings like this talk. But his eyes darted to the stairwell door, and I knew he wasn't convinced. I stepped toward the door, my pulse quickening. The creak came again, closer, like deliberate footsteps. I opened the door a crack, peering into the dim stairwell. A shadow flickered on the landing below, too tall to be a trick of light. "Hello?" I called, my voice echoing off concrete. No answer. The shadow vanished, and the stairwell fell silent. I shut the door, my heart hammering, and turned to Carl. "You almost done?" 5 minutes, he said, his drill whirring again. I didn't tell him about the shadow. I didn't need to. The air felt heavier now, like the building itself was holding its breath. When Carl finished, he handed me 2 new keys, their edges sharp and cold. "Deadbolt solid. Nobody's getting in without a fight." I thanked him, slipping the keys into my pocket, and watched him disappear into the elevator. Alone, I stepped into my loft, the familiar scent of cedar and lavender grounding me. But something was off. A chair was slightly askew, a drawer in the kitchen ajar. Small things, but enough to make my skin crawl. Someone had been here, and it wasn't just a realtor's curiosity. My phone buzzed. An email from Margaret. Subject, "Let's talk, Sarah." The words were soft, almost pleading. "We love you. This has gone far enough. Come by the house this afternoon. No guests, just us. Let's fix this, Mom." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the delete button. A part of me, the part that still remembered her tucking me in, her voice soft with bedtime stories, wanted to believe her. But the bruise on my temple throbbed, a reminder of who they'd become. I didn't reply. Not yet. By 2:15, I was pulling into their driveway in Queen Anne, the rain now a steady drum against my windshield. The house was a postcard of suburban perfection. Manicured lawn, solar lights lining the flower beds, a porch swing that hadn't moved in years. But the air felt staged, too pristine, like a set waiting for its actors. I stepped out, my coat damp, and hesitated at the front door. Before I could knock, Mom opened it, her arms outstretched. "Sarah, baby," she said, pulling me into a hug that felt like a costume, too stiff to be real. "Thank you for coming." Inside, the living room was a theater. Fresh roses sat on the coffee table, their scent cloying. A tray of lemon tea and shortbread cookies, my favorite, or so they remembered, was arranged with precision. Framed photos lined the mantel, me and James at a lake, my high school debate trophy, moments I hadn't seen displayed in years. The lighting was soft, inviting, but it felt like a trap. James sat on the armrest of the couch, hands folded, his face unreadable. Clara wasn't there. "Just us," Mom said again, gesturing to the plush chair where I used to open Christmas presents. I didn't sit. Dad emerged from the hallway, a manila envelope in his hand. his expression a mix of calm and something sharper. Smugness, maybe? "We've been thinking," he said, his voice smooth as polished wood, "about keeping things fair. No more misunderstandings." He offered the envelope like it was a gift. "What is it?" I asked, though my gut already knew. "Just something to clarify family boundaries," he said, "so no one gets hurt again." I opened it, my fingers steady but cold. The paper inside was thick, legal. The words "deed transfer agreement" bold and unyielding. The rest was dressed in neutral terms: asset clarification, mutual understanding. But it was clear they wanted my loft, my home, the one I'd paid for with years of late nights and careful saving. "You're asking me to sign away my home," I said, my voice low. Mom smiled, her hands folded in her lap. "It's just paperwork, sweetheart. You don't need all that space alone." "You're not even reading it," Dad added, his tone sharpening. "Don't you trust us?" The room shrank, the air thick with expectation. I closed the envelope and set it on the table just left of the tea tray. "You set this up like a reconciliation," I said, my voice steady now. "The roses, the cookies, the photos. Like you were inviting me home." "We are," Mom said, her head tilting, her smile unwavering. "No," I said. "You're inviting me to hand over the last piece of myself you don't control." Dad's mouth twitched, a flash of anger breaking his calm. "That's not what this is!" I took a step back, my eyes sweeping the room. The roses, the tea, the photos. It was all a performance. A script they'd written to erase me. "This isn't peace," I said. "It's theft, with flowers on the side." James finally spoke, his voice low. "It's just property, Sarah." I turned to him, my brother, the one I'd once stayed up with until dawn, dreaming of futures we'd build together. "It's not about property," I said. "It's about what you think I'm worth." No one followed me as I walked out. I got into my car, shut the door, and let the first tear fall. I didn't wipe it away. I dialed Lauren's number, my lawyer, and when she answered, I said, "I'm ready to go all in, file everything." The second danger struck that night. As I drove home, the rain turned torrential, the wipers barely keeping up. A black SUV tailgated me, its headlights blinding in my rearview mirror. I sped up, but it stayed close, too close, weaving when I changed lanes. My heart pounded as I took a sharp turn onto a side street, the SUV following for a block before vanishing into the storm. I pulled over, my hands shaking, and checked my doors. Whoever it was, they'd wanted me to know I was being watched. Morning brought a silence heavier than the rain. I made black tea, letting it steep until it was bitter, and sat by my kitchen window. The glass was fogged, blurring the city outside, but I could still feel the weight of last night's chase. My phone buzzed. An email from Lauren. "Meet me at 9:30. We have options." I dressed quickly, choosing jeans and a sweater, armor for the fight ahead. At Lauren's office downtown, the air was crisp with the scent of coffee and paper. She met me with a nod, a folder already in hand. "I reviewed everything," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Good news, you still hold the deed to their Queen Anne house. You bought it in 2009, a foreclosure rescue. They never transferred it back." I blinked, the words sinking in. "You're sure?" She tapped the signature line on a document. "Your name, your title, they've been living there on assumption, not ownership." I leaned back, the chair creaking under me. I'd given them a lifeline when their world was crumbling, paid the mortgage when their business tanked. They'd turned it into a noose around my neck. "What now?" I asked. Lauren's eyes met mine. "You decide. Eviction, sale, or let it sit. It's your call." I took her pen. its weight grounding me. "Evict them," I said, "and sell it." The decision wasn't rage. It was clarity. I'd given them enough of my life, my heart, my trust. This was surgical, final. Lauren filed the notice to vacate that afternoon. No warnings, no fanfare. 3 days later, the sheriff delivered the eviction order. I didn't see it myself, but James, ever the chronicler, posted a grainy security camera video to our family group chat. Dad opened the door in a wrinkled bathrobe, a piece of toast in hand, blinking at the officer like he'd stepped into a stranger's life. Mom stood behind him, her coffee mug frozen mid-sip, her face a mask of shock. The officer handed them the envelope and Dad slapped it against the wall, his shout muffled as the video cut off. I watched it once, then again, my finger hovering over the screen. Not triumph, not joy, just a quiet settling, like dust after a storm. I closed the app and turned my phone face down. The third danger came that evening. As I walked to my car in a grocery store lot, a man lingered near the entrance, his hood up, his eyes tracking me. I quickened my pace, keys clutched like a weapon, but he followed, keeping just far enough back to avoid suspicion. I ducked into a crowded coffee shop, my heart racing, and watched through the window as he hesitated, then walked away. I stayed until closing, sipping a latte I didn't want, my mind replaying the SUV, the shadow, the scratch. Back at my loft, I sat in the dark, the new deadbolt a small comfort. My phone buzzed, a message from Clara, James' wife. A single line, "They've done worse than you know." Attached was a photo of a family album, its leather fraying. Page after page, no trace of me. No birthday candles, no graduation cap, not even the awkward Christmas photos with Mom's hideous sweaters. I whispered to the empty room, so it wasn't just me. I typed back, "Thank you for showing me what I couldn't prove." The words felt like a release, a crack in the wall they'd built around me. The fourth danger struck the next morning. I woke to a faint hiss in my loft, like air escaping a tire. I followed the sound to the kitchen, where gas leaked from a loosened stove valve. My hands shook as I shut it off, opened the windows and called a technician. "Someone tampered with it," he said, his voice grim. "This wasn't an accident." I nodded, my throat tight, and added another lock to my mental checklist. I checked social media, a reflex I regretted. Mom had posted a video, a clipped version of my Gala speech, my voice breaking on. This wasn't agreed on. It was spliced with images of James smiling, balloons floating, me looking stiff and ungrateful. The caption read, "We raised her with love. We never expected betrayal." Hashtags followed, family matters, broken hearts, daughter of stranger. The comments were a knife. Ungrateful. Some kids are never satisfied. They weren't just erasing me, they were rewriting me as the villain. My hands were steady now, a surprise even to me. I opened my Dropbox and uploaded everything, dated wire transfers to James's startup, the loft's original deed, emails begging for mortgage help, a voicemail from Mom asking me to cover it just this once. No commentary, no hashtags, just a folder named reality. I shut the laptop. I didn't need it to go viral, I just needed it to exist. The fifth danger came that afternoon. As I walked through Pike Place Market, a flower cart tipped, its heavy frame careening toward me. I leapt aside, my shoulder grazing a stall, flowers scattering like confetti. The vendor apologized, blaming a loose wheel, but I saw a figure slip into the crowd, their coat too familiar, too much like the man from the grocery store. I didn't chase them. I couldn't afford to. Back home, I dug through an old storage bin, unearthing a college photo album. There I was, crooked teeth, debate team pin, that hideous floral prom dress I'd begged Mom not to make me wear. Each photo was proof I'd existed, that I'd mattered, if only to myself. Tucked inside was a sticky note in Dad's handwriting. "Sarah, knew you had it in you. Proud of you, kid." The words stung, a ghost of a father who'd once cared. I closed the album and whispered, "You loved me once. That doesn't excuse you now." A text from my Aunt Susan, Mom's older sister, lit up my phone. Saw the folder. About time someone told the truth. I'm here if you need a witness. I stared at it, a lifeline I hadn't expected. The glass house was cracking. Not with a crash, but with quiet, steady fractures. Days later, I drove to the Queen Anne house, the moving truck already there, its back door open like a hungry mouth. The realtor, a brisk woman named Ellen, stood by the gate, clipboard in hand. Movers hauled boxes from the garage, strangers' things now, not my parents'. They'd left days ago, the eviction order forcing them out. I stepped inside, the air heavy with absence. The walls were bare. No photos, no paintings, just the faint outline where frames had hung. The kitchen cabinet still had that scratch Dad swore he'd fix. The living room corner where I'd built pillow forts was just a patch of carpet now. The hallway bathroom's chipped tile, James's fault, not the contractor's, stared back like an old wound. On the kitchen counter was a letter, my name printed in cold, mechanical font. I opened it, expecting venom. You were never part of us. No signature, no apology, just a final cut. I folded it, tucking it into my coat, and paused at the hallway cabinet, a small wooden door under the stairs. Inside was a dusty shoebox. I lifted the lid, my breath catching. A photo. Me at 8, pigtails uneven, holding a science fair trophy, my homemade wind turbine gleaming behind me, alone on the stage but smiling. Behind it, folded like a relic, was the napkin rose from the gala, its creases soft but unmistakable. I didn't know why they'd kept it. Guilt, neglect. It didn't matter. It was mine. I handed the shoebox to Ellen. "This stays with me," I said. She nodded, no questions asked. I walked to my car, the rain light now, and didn't look back. Not at the porch, the roof I'd helped shingle, or the door where they'd once waved goodbye. That night in my loft, I sat with the box beside me. The napkin rose in my lap. My phone buzzed. Lauren again. Sales final. Funds wired. I stared at the words, not because I doubted them, but because freedom felt like a language I'd forgotten. The morning light was clean, streaming through my windows like a promise. I set the napkin rose on my dining table, its soft folds a quiet vow. The silence didn't press anymore. It held me, gentle and sure. An envelope arrived with the mail, cream-colored, my name in Clara's cursive. Inside, a baby shower invitation and a note. "I'm sorry, I didn't know how far they went. You deserved better." I didn't tear it up. I didn't go. Instead, I wrote a check to a women's shelter. Memo line. For a new beginning. Some stories end in fire. Mine ended in silence. And that was enough. I cooked dinner that night. Pasta with garlic and thyme, simple but mine. Anna came over, a bottle of wine in one hand, an orchid in the other. "Your place needs green," she said, setting it by the window. We ate slowly, talking about nothing and everything, work, books, a show she loved and I refused to watch. The napkin rose sat on the table, not perfect, but enough. I raised my glass. "To building our own tables," I said. Anna clinked hers against mine, and never begging for a seat again. I wasn't the girl hiding in corners anymore, folding napkins to prove I belonged. I was whole, not cold, not cruel, just complete. They'd tried to take everything, but they'd given me back myself. And that was worth more than any house, any deed, any name on a guest list.